Hey guys, it's Mike here from Arnold Tutoring, and the English Premier League soccer starts again this week, a new season. It feels like we just finished the World Cup, but the new Premier League season is about to start. I wanted to go over some of the stats from last year and just in general some of the strategy that might go and be involved in some of the financial decisions that clubs make, how the points table works, and some of the different intricacies about soccer when it compares to North American sports. So I wanted to highlight three of those main differences first, then talk about last year's table and see if there maybe were some strategic moves that the teams could have made or could make going forward, because there's such a difference if you do not make it into those top 17 teams. So the first thing is wins, draws, and losses. There's three ways to gain points in games. You get 3 points for a win, 1 point for a draw, and 0 points for a loss. So it's a really interesting dynamic with 3 points for a win and 1 for a draw or a tie, as opposed to hockey where you get 2 points for a win and 1 point for an overtime loss or a tie. There are no playoffs. So every team in the Premier League, there's 20 teams in the league, everyone plays the other 19 teams twice, which means 38 games each. You play them once home, once away, and at the end, whoever has the most points wins. So there's a lot more strategy with, do you go for wins, hang on for draws, especially since there's no playoffs at the end, so you kind of have to be there at the top, and the most consistent team generally wins. Lastly, the most important thing, and I think something that more North American sports could adopt, is relegation. And that means that if you suck, you can't just mail it in for the last half of the year. In fact, the bottom of the table, you see I've highlighted places 17 to 20. These are the final standings from last season. The bottom is often more interesting than the top. For instance, last season, the championship was decided well in advance of the last game, and that will happen when you don't have playoffs sometimes. But even more importantly, the bottom 3 teams that finish in the league get relegated to the division below for the next season. So it would be like, the bottom 3 teams in the NHL end up relegated down to the AHL for the following season. And you can imagine what comes along with that. A lot of your star players would leave to other teams where they're going to get paid more. You're no longer playing against some of the best teams in the country, or in the case of soccer, the best teams in the world. So it's a huge, huge loss to finish in, say, 18th place versus 17th place. And I wanted to take a look at that. So you can see that Swansea, Stoke City, and West Brom, they were the teams that were relegated at the end of last season, and they'll be starting in sort of the B division in England's Championship League this season, with 3 promoted teams, Cardiff, Wolves, and Fulham, coming to join the Premier League this year. The points, 31 in last place, 33, 33, and then 36, which means Swansea were only 3 points from safety. Southampton were only 3 points from relegation. And I wanted to take a look at what that difference actually means from a financial standpoint. And then we'll dig into the different draws and wins that they each had. 17th place. The Premier League is one of the most watched sports leagues in the world. For soccer is obviously one of the most popular sports, but the English League specifically is watched all over the world. They just signed a giant new TV deal worth well over $5 billion, £5 billion I should say. And that money gets distributed amongst all of the teams, along with some other factors, but based on what position they fall in. And there's a lot of money for all the teams, even dead last. So I'm going to talk about what that money looks like. 17th place, they earned about $107 million from the TV deal. That's in pounds. Versus 18th place, almost $10 million less, they earned about $98 million. Okay, so if all things are being equal and there was no relegation, and say the exact same season happened where these positions, they finished in the exact same spot, 17 and 18 again, they'd expect to earn 107 the next year and 98 the next year. However, because of relegation, nothing's happening with Southampton. They're going to expect that 107 the following year too. Let's say they're going to finish in 17th again. However, Swansea, for next season, they're not in the Premier League anymore, so they won't get a share of those TV dollars. In fact, they're going to lose about 54 million of it. The Premier League still protects them a bit because you can't lose all 98 million at once, so they get about a $44 million, what's called parachute payment, which means a loss of $54 million, all things equal. Now, on top of that, we talked about they're now in like a crappier league, right? So they're going to be playing random teams. Their fans are not going to be as interested because they won't have Manchester United and Man City and Chelsea and Arsenal coming to play them. They'll have these lower league teams that are not as impressive, not as much star power. It's lower entertainment value, so they won't be able to charge as much for tickets. Things like hospitality, other commercial deals may fall through. So we're going to say that's going to cost them like another £12 million for the next year. Which means that's going to leave them at, what's that, 98 minus 54 is 44, minus another 12 is about £32 million they're going to earn the next year. And again, assuming Southampton finishes 17th, they would earn about 107. That is a difference of £75 million. 3 points separated those two teams. So if we even break that down by points, divide by 3, that is £25 million. I'll try my best for the pound symbol, something like that. £25 million per point. Now, if we're talking expected value, surely these teams could have invested a little bit more, gone to their ownership and said, hey, look, if we do not finish above the relegation zone, we're going to lose £75 million. You could at least give us an extra $30 million to buy another defender to turn some of these losses. 21 losses for Swansea City. If they could have just turned 3 of those losses into draws by maybe not even being so offensive at all and just sitting back and hoping for a 0-0 draw. I know that's not as entertaining as they might like, but you can't tell me that any investor would look at that and think that that's a bad investment to give them an extra £30 million, bring in an extra couple defenders, and hope that you can turn some of those losses into draws. I think that's one of the most interesting dynamics in all of sport from a financial perspective. It is such a huge loss to be demoted or relegated to the league below, because it's also tougher to get back up and start earning Premier League dollars again. But all that separates it is such a tiny margin. So if I was coaching, I would go to my board and my owners and say, hey, give me some of this extra investment. We do not want to fall short by just 3 points and cost us £75 million. Hopefully this is helpful. I hope you're excited for the new Premier League season. We'll do some updates throughout the year, see if any coaches take on my strategy. You can always send us more questions to info@arnoldtutoring.com. Thanks so much.